cutlass, burned my sorghum in the house, and told us this is not our region. They said our land is east of the Tigray River.
They kept saying every night, "We will kill you. Go out of the area."
The fighting followed years of growing tensions between the Ethiopian federal government, led by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, and leaders of Tigray's ruling political party. Government forces were soon joined by security forces from the Amhara region, which neighbors Tigray, as well as soldiers from the country of Eritrea. The conflict has resulted in numerous abuses on both sides and millions of people displaced. Initially, heavy fighting between the Ethiopian military with their allies against Tigrayan fighters took place around western Tigray. Electricity, banking, and telecommunications, including the internet and phone lines to Tigray, were cut off. Residents described heavy shelling and gunfire as Ethiopian and allied forces entered their towns.
When the Ethiopian and Amhara forces entered the town, people were panicked and began running to the farms. They started killing people. No warning, just shooting. They shot at people running.
Soon, an interim administration for Western Tigray was established by forces from the neighboring Amhara region, an administration hostile to the presence of Tigrayans.
Papers said Tigrayans need to leave the town immediately. They were thrown everywhere. So when we woke up, we received on your door or on the way to church, everywhere.
I was in Dansha town where I have a hairdressing shop. 6 militia came to loot my shop. 2 of them raped me. They said, "You Tigrayan, you should disappear from the land west of the Kaza. You are evil, and we are purifying your blood."
In the first 2 months of their control, they looted everything in the town. All the crops, they took our cows. We had nothing to eat. Everything we had was taken.
The militia would even write on the houses that belong to Tigrayans, "This is ours. This is Amhara house." They told us not to speak in Tigrinya.
Meanwhile, as reports of atrocities became widespread, Ethiopian authorities limited access to Western Tigray for international journalists and human rights and humanitarian groups. In Adi Goshu town, in January 2021, Amhara Special Forces and militias rounded up around 60 residents, transported them to the Tekeze Bridge, and shot them.
The Amhara Special Forces told us to disembark. They lined us up in rows, cocked their guns, and sprayed us with bullets. We fell in the ditch below. After that, they said, "Tigrayans don't die easily. Shoot again."
As abuses in Western Tigray continued, hundreds of thousands of Tigrayans were forced to flee their homes. Some fled to Sudan, while many more were forcibly displaced to other parts of Tigray in a brutal ethnic cleansing campaign.
After seeing this and other incidents, I thought, what are we expecting? Are we waiting for them to kill all of us? Why don't we cross the Tekaza River while we still have our lives?
We could not access the toilets. They did not give us any food or water. A lot of people were falling ill. There were some people that died from torture. They tie your hands and feet. They hit you in your testicle, your head, and your chest. All of us went through it.
Tigrayans in Western Tigray continue to be subjected to torture, arbitrary detention, and other grave human rights abuses.
All I want is peace. All I want to do is to be able to speak Tigrinya freely, my mother tongue. I am a beekeeper, and all I want to do is work.
Pleased to announce that the National Institutes of Health has offered to license several COVID-19 technologies to the COVID-19 Technology Access Pool, or CTAP. Discussions are
in the world. So it's a thrill to be able to share that with you. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over some of the protocol for today's press conference. I will turn shortly to Assistant Secretary for Global Affairs, Lois Pace, standing right here. And then she will turn to the Secretary of HHS, Javier Becerra, and then also to the Director General of the World Health Organization. After remarks have concluded, I'll open the floor to Q&A. We will prioritize questions from folks here in the room. And when you have a question, please, as a reminder, kindly state your name, your full name, and your media outlet. And then we will open the floor, if time allows, for questions from media who are joining us today by phone. We do kindly also ask that you keep your questions, to the extent possible, focused on the topics at hand. We have a hard stop at 3:30 p.m. And with that, we will get started. Thank you again. I will turn now to Assistant Secretary for Global Affairs, Lois Pace.
Assistant Secretary Leventine, thank you very much. And welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on what is a rainy day here in Washington, D.C. As the Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs said, I know that we are joined by others on the phone and around the world, and so we're grateful for your presence. As has been mentioned, my name is Lois Pace, and I have the pleasure and honor of heading up our department's global work under the leadership of our Secretary, Mr. Javier Becerra. And as you all know, Mr. Becerra recently celebrated his one-year anniversary with us as Secretary of Health and Human Services here, and has been able to really point to a number of achievements of our department over time, including our global accomplishments. And so grateful that he will be here to review those with you today. But he's not alone. He is joined by the Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, and it's really quite significant that they will be on stage here together, especially considering from day one, President Biden really reiterating the importance of our relationship with the World Health Organization. It should be clear to anyone who has been watching the space that the U.S. has expressed and in fact doubled down on our unflinching support for WHO, recognizing the critical role they play in the world of global public health. We have been pleased and honored to partner with them, not just in the wake of COVID-19, but over decades since their founding. And in fact, the U.S., of course, played a significant role in the founding of the WHO over 70 years ago, and that is partly why we're here. World Health Day is a commemoration of that very founding. Of course, with the theme of this year, Our Planet, Our Health, we want to look more closely at the intersection of health and climate. But of course, both Secretary Becerra and Director General Tedros will be speaking to a range of health issues as part of today's briefing. So without further ado, I would like to invite both gentlemen to the stage. Again, Secretary Javier Becerra, the Secretary of Health and Human Services here for the United States government, and Director General Dr. Tedros from the World Health Organization. Thank you very much again.
I'm going to start by mentioning why we are wearing masks. So if I can thank the Assistant Secretary Lois Pace for her work on global affairs here with the Department of Health and Human Services, and for her leadership on these crucial issues as we work with the World Health Organization. I want to welcome Dr. Tedros here to the U.S. It's been a few years since he had a chance to be in the country, and thank him again for all the work that he is doing in leading the world and all the countries that are concerned about not just health, but obviously COVID. And I wanted to mention the masks out of precaution, although I think both of us are both vaccinated and boosted. We are wearing masks because each of us has been close to someone who tested positive recently. We have both tested negative as late as today, but just out of precaution, we will wear the mask while we're not speaking. Dr. Tedros, thank you for being here at the Department of Health and Human Services. I am honored and pleased to celebrate this year's World Health Day with you and our valued partners of the World Health Organization. I'd actually like to begin my remarks with a few comments about the situation in Ukraine, where just this week we've witnessed even more unconscionable cruelty. Today, the United Nations rightfully suspended Russia from the UN Human Rights Council. As Ambassador Thomas Greenfield noted this week, Russia's position on the council was the height of hypocrisy, and we cannot let this brazen inhumanity go without consequences. The U.S. stands with the people of Ukraine, and we join others in condemning Russia's attacks on health facilities, including maternity and children's hospitals, and certainly the cruelty directly towards human beings. I specifically want to thank the WHO and other UN humanitarian agencies and partners who, with the support of our CDC, are working tirelessly to provide life-saving supplies and services to affected communities throughout Ukraine. This year's World Health Day theme is Our Planet, Our Health. It resonates deeply with us here at HHS. We know that the challenges we face won't be solved by one leader or one country alone, but by the world coming together and fighting for what's right. That's why I was pleased to host the Director General and his senior advisors this week to discuss how the U.S. and the WHO can work more closely together to promote global health. Just 1 year into the Biden administration, the United States is leading the effort to strengthen the international health regulations 2005, which are so important for us to work together as a community. And in the spirit of One Planet, One Health, President Biden and the United States have been at the forefront in the fight against COVID-19 worldwide. As we detailed at the President's COVID-19 briefing earlier this week, the U.S. was the first country in the world to donate a significant amount of our own vaccine supply to the world, to purchase 1 billion Pfizer vaccine doses to donate to other countries, to broker a deal with the U.S. manufacturer and COVAX to get vaccines into humanitarian zones, and to give up our own place in line for delivery of doses we ordered, enabling the African Union to more quickly access over 100 million Moderna vaccine doses. In addition, this week, we announced that we will be the first nation to donate tens of millions of vaccines for children, pediatric COVID-19 vaccines, to low and lower middle income countries for free. That's leadership, but our fight isn't over. While we are grateful for the Senate's latest work on a $10 billion bipartisan plan to help meet some of the country's COVID needs, significantly more is needed to fund both our domestic response and our global response. This virus knows no borders, and it's in our national interest to vaccinate the world and protect against future variants. Without global funding, USAID won't have resources to get more shots in arms around the world. We'll be forced to scale back our work providing oxygen and antiviral pills to others in need. We will lack the funding to provide rapid testing to countries in need. At every turn, we've worked with global partners to share not just our vaccine supply, but our knowledge and technologies. During the virtual COVID-19 dialogue with ministers of health, the United States was pleased to announce that the National Institutes of Health has offered to license several COVID-19 technologies to the COVID-19 Technology Access Pool, or CTAP. Discussions are still ongoing, but we hope to conclude this process as quickly as possible. But we also know that COVID-19 is not the only threat the world faces today. Our planet is in peril. That's why President Biden committed to a 50% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030 and the decarbonization of federal facilities and procurement, all with the focus on racial and social equity. Because we know climate change is health policy as well. The Biden-Harris administration is also working to support gender equity here at home and around the world. In October of last year, we strengthened Title 10, our domestic family planning program to restore access to equitable, affordable, quality family planning services for more Americans. And in January, I launched the first ever HHS Task Force on Reproductive Health Care Access, which Assistant Secretary for Global Affairs Pace co-chairs with Admiral Rachel Levine, our Assistant Secretary for Health. Half a century ago, then U.S. Surgeon General Luther Terry addressed the World Health Assembly during the fight against smallpox. What he said was prescient. We have the knowledge, and knowledge represents responsibility. Those words are as true today as they were then. We have the knowledge, we have the responsibility, and we have the will to build a stronger global health system, one that can prevent, not just prevent, but be prepared for the next outbreak before it becomes a pandemic. One that lifts up not just the wealthy and the healthy, but the meek and the marginalized. But only if we work together. We are lucky to have such a strong partner in the World Health Organization and Director General Tedros as we build a healthier world. So please join me in giving a warm U.S. welcome to a good friend of the United States and a champion for global health, Dr. Tedros.
Just a moment, in an abundance of caution, we're also just going to make sure we are using all of our sanitary tools available.
Thank you so much, Secretary Becerra, and good afternoon, everyone. I also thank Assistant Secretary for Global Affairs, Lois Bates, and Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs, Sarah Lovenheim. It's a real pleasure to be here in Washington, D.C. on World Health Day and celebrating World Health Day with my good friend Javier. Over the past few days, I have had a series of very productive meetings with representatives of the administration, senators, House members, and other leaders. Of course, starting from our own partner, from the HHS, from Secretary Becerra on Monday. We renewed old friendships and forged new ones. We discussed the COVID-19 pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and WHO's 5 major priorities for the next 5 years, including supporting countries to make a paradigm shift towards promoting health, preventing disease, and not just treating it. Radically reorienting health systems towards primary health care, strengthening global capacities for pandemic preparedness and response, harnessing the power of science, research, innovation, data, and digital technologies for health, and continuing to strengthen WHO at the leading and directing authority on global health. World Health Day marks the day that the Constitution of the World Health Organization came into effect on 7th of April 1948. Although our headquarters are in Switzerland, in one way, WHO was born here in the United States. It was in 1945, during the conference to establish the United Nations in San Francisco, that the idea of an international health organization was first proposed. And at the International Health Conference in New York City the following year, the Constitution of the World Health Organization was adopted by 51 members of the UN, including the United States. For the past 75 years, the United States has been a strong partner in global health. The US played a pivotal role in eradicating smallpox, which remains one of the greatest achievements in the history of global health. The US has continued to be a leader in global health through PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, as well as its support for the response to malaria, TB, polio, and many other diseases. The US has also been a strong supporter for WHO's work to respond to health emergencies, including the war in Ukraine. With support from the United States, WHO is working with Ukraine's Ministry of Health to keep the country's health system running. And we're working with neighboring countries to support access to care for refugees. WHO and our partners have so far delivered more than 180 metric tons of medical supplies to the hardest hit areas in Ukraine, and we're preparing to deliver more. We are outraged that attacks on healthcare are continuing. Today, on the 42nd day of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, we crossed a grim milestone of more than 100 attacks. As of now, WHO has verified 103 incidents of attacks on healthcare, with 73 people killed and 51 injured, including health workers and patients. Attacks on healthcare are a violation of international humanitarian law. Peace is the only way forward. I again call on the Russian Federation to stop the war. As Secretary Becerra described, the United States has long been a strong supporter of the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The United States is the largest financial donor to the Art Accelerator since it began, and the largest donor of vaccines to COVAX, as Javier outlined. And we continue to look to the US for its support to end the pandemic globally and to address the many other challenges to health we face. Doing this is in the interest of the United States itself. I'm painfully aware that the pandemic has taken a heavy toll here in the US. I offer my deep condolences to all Americans who have lost someone they love. And I offer my deep appreciation and respect to every health worker who has put themselves in the harm's way to serve others in the course of the pandemic. COVID is a powerful demonstration that when health is at risk, everything is at risk. The pandemic has highlighted the intimate links between the health of humans animals, and the environment. And yet, we're rapidly making the planet on which all life depends uninhabitable. Which is why World Health Day 2020's theme is Our Planet, Our Health. The climate crisis is a health crisis. Air pollution kills 7 million people every year, and 99% of the world's population breathes unhealthy air, mainly as a result of burning fossil fuels. Our warming world is facilitating the spread of mosquitoes and the disease they carry. Extreme weather events, biodiversity loss, land degradation, and water scarcity and are displacing people and damaging their health. Systems that produce highly processed, unhealthy foods are driving a wave of obesity, increasing cancer and heart disease, and generating 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions. There are solutions at hand. WHO's manifesto for a healthy recovery from COVID-19 recommends more than 80 concrete actions governments can take in 6 policy areas, with dividends for the health of our planet and the health of humans. The health sector must lead by example, and I applaud the United States under the leadership of Admiral Rachel Levin for its commitment to decarbonizing its health system as part of WHO's COP26 health program. At WHO, we have also committed to becoming carbon neutral by 2030. This World Health Day, as the world recovers and rebuilds from the pandemic, we have a choice. We can go back to the way things were, or we can change course. We can create societies, economies, and products that nurture health and well-being, and stop subsidizing those that destroy it. Because we cannot afford to pump carbon into the atmosphere at the same rate and still breathe clean air. We must choose. We cannot afford the same patterns of consumption and expect less diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, and cancer. We must choose. We cannot afford ever deepening inequalities and expect continued prosperity. We must choose. And so, this World Health Day, we call on all governments to choose our planet, our health. Our planet, our health. I thank you, Secretary, again, and glad to be with you and celebrating the World Health Day with you. And thank you also to the press who joined us today.
It looks like we've got one question over there from Robert at Fierce Healthcare.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. This is for Secretary Becerra. Congress has just left town without passing a COVID relief bill that does not include $5 billion for global aid. Can you tell me how that lack of funding is going to get more specific and how that lack of funding is going to impact your efforts? And also, you spoke about how you need more funding. Right now, there's some plans for another round of relief funding in Congress. How much do you think that you need to help get us over the hump?
Robert, thanks for the question. The numbers speak for themselves. We've been pretty clear with Congress and the public that we have been depleting the resources provided principally now through the American Rescue Plan now for some time. We alerted Congress quite some time ago, and at this stage we have had to take actions as a result of lacking the funding to maintain some of the programs and services that Americans have counted on. All those doctors, hospitals, pharmacists, nursing homes, long care centers, community health centers that were relying on the Provider Relief Fund that Congress enacted to help reimburse them for some of the COVID-related costs. Those have now been stopped. The claims that no longer are being accepted as of this week for even vaccines. 2 weeks ago, we halted taking back claims for testing and treatment. We extended the timeline for vaccinations an extra 2 weeks. And over that course of time, we received millions of applications for reimbursement. And so that is now a fund where we are going to process what we have, but we can't accept more. We are having to limit the purchase of some of the therapeutic treatments that we know are successful in helping people stay away from a hospital after they become affected, and in many cases can save a life. We can no longer make the advanced purchases as directly and in the bulk sums that we had in the past, which means we stand a chance to now get in the back of the line for some of those therapies. We've been at the front of the line. We've been able to lock in millions of those in advance because we put down the money early. We are now having to scale back the idea of how much testing we could do. The notion of doing test and treat, which now we're capable of doing, so that if you test, immediately after you test, if you test positive, you can actually get treated. That's in jeopardy as well. And certainly the continued provision of N95 masks will be put in jeopardy. Vaccines, we were fortunate we made early purchases, but at the same time, if we continue to move towards a second boost for the entire population, that we would not have the capacity to meet the need there. And so all of these things are hitting us, and even though we still have some money as we try to extend as far as we can, we're not able to do the forecasting and the early investment that we did before that always kept Americans where they needed to be, ready to get the supply and the services they needed. And in terms of Congress going on, well, the numbers speak for themselves. And having been a former member of the chamber, I know how difficult sometimes it can be to pass critical legislation. But we can make a choice. We could, as I heard one member of Congress say yesterday, crush COVID and finish the job that we seem to be getting close to doing, or we can let it surge back. And I think everyone understands what it means if COVID surges back or some new variant comes around. So it's pretty obvious. The numbers speak for themselves. We all have to do what we can. We have a responsibility, so everybody's got their role. We hope everyone will fulfill their responsibility.
Thank you, Secretary. Our next question.